Just Stats, Reggie Johnson, Eugene Morgan coming to you from the lovely city of Atlanta, Georgia, and Eugene. Let's go ahead and put this guy up here. Let's go full screen. Let's go full stage here for Mr. Eberflus here, the man of the hour. Now, for the people who can't see, it's a tweet. This is Matt Eberflus is one of the worst coaches in NFL history, and it says a record of 42-31, road games 3-19, 0-18 on Sundays, of which we discussed on this show not too very long ago.
Yep.
Win percentage rank 217 out of 229. Man, so that means for people who struggle with math that there's only 12 people worse than this guy, right?
Wow.
Right, man. There's only 12 human beings worse than this man all time. Trailing at halftime, he's 5-22. One score games 5-17. NFC North 2-14 versus winning teams 1-14. I mean, the real question you got to ask yourself here is how did he even get to this far? Like, how did he even make it coaching this long? I mean, that's your real question when you look at how abysmal this record is. What are your thoughts here on the Eberflus situation?
I mean, we all saw the meltdown. We all saw it on Thanksgiving Day. Like I was like cooking Thanksgiving dinner and I was watching it and somebody came in.
Did it get disturbed with that, man?
I just had it in the background because I knew I wasn't really, it's just had a background. I was watching it and then I was like, my turn. I was like, I'm watching like Caleb do all the hand motions and I'm like, call a timeout. Didn't have a timeout, call a timeout.
And I'm like, he was hand motioning. It was like 7 seconds on the clock and he was hand motioning.
Right. It was like, how many? So again, and I'm like, I don't really usually curse when it's coming to football games. I curse. It's like, wow, you're really upset. It's like, yeah, because there's a time he has a timeout. Why is he not calling timeout? So, I think that was just like the cherry, on the Sunday, right? And it was one of those things. After that, you put it right there on the screen and people can just Google his record and just see it. It's like that was just you could. There's no way you can come back from that. There's just no way you could. You had the team. You had one of the best teams in the National Football League in the NFC East, or I'm sorry, in NFC, and you could have just beat them, and you blew a chance of beating them. Period.
Right, divisional, man. It all set up.
Right,
and this is a perfect situation for a coach getting fired. I'm talking to a friend a while back ago. He's a Bears fan. I was telling him back then that the Bears are setting up for a perfect coach firing situation because here's how coach firing situations set up. You get a guy who's not doing that well. They get a team that on paper should be way better than what the previous team was.
Right.
You also get a guy who's got a quarterback now. And now the quarterback is giving hope to the team, but that's usually not good news if there was already a coach there when that quarterback got there. Because now, guess what? You're on the hot seat, buddy. As soon as that new quarterback comes in there, they're waiting to get him a shiny new coach to go with him. But they might let you live because the last situation might not have been all the way your fault. So they're letting you stay around and coach. But these aren't usually great situations. So all of these were adding up for Eberflus here coming into this season, besides just not being a great coach, So it shouldn't be any surprise that this is the outcome, right?
No surprise. Again, maybe you can put some of those records like we have on the screen to the past, whatever talent you had, being quarterback, being offensive, defense, whatever it could be. But now you have a legit quarterback. And since you fired your offensive coordinator, has looked better. And so now you're just taking the opportunity out of his hands to win the game. So yeah, you and I agree. It makes I completely agree with you on it never makes sense to fire an NFL quarterback in the middle season and the season. I never understood it because the interim guy I feel like he always gets the shorthand, at the end of the season because he's not getting probably going to get the position at the end.
The interim coach.
Yeah, interim coach, right.
Okay,
I always agree with you. I just never feel like the interim coach never gets he'll get, of course, he's going to get the token interview that they always get, but he's not
right, because he's already in the building. You got to pass the guy on the way to your car, so you go. I mean, you might as well at least talk to him.
Yeah,
while you're there.
Like, they get an interview, like you said. I'm to the car. We're both going to. But this one is just like there's no way you could get. There's no way he could get Pat. There's no way he's going to the next game in this situation. And this is just like this is just a complete meltdown. I always agree with you on this. Like, don't put the interim coach in, but they really had no choice. He really put all his chips in, and it's like, well, you gave us no choice in this matter.
You felt like it was a situation where your hands kind of forced. Even talking to the same friend a while back ago, we did speak on the fact that the Bears don't tend to replace coaches midseason. So it's something that we definitely discussed amongst ourselves. Then it happened here because this was about roughly 3 weeks ago-ish or so, 3 to 4 weeks ago. And now 3 to 4 weeks later, here we are. And they're replacing them. But I felt like you kind of put the ownership in a bad spot here. We all know that ownership tends to hate nationally televised games going like this. Going like this. When a nationally televised game goes like when you can hide this game in a 1 o'clock slot with 8 other games, it's a little bit easier to disappear in that environment. But it's hard to disappear in this environment on a holiday. Everybody's watching you. You lay an egg here. It looks terrible. And the way that you lose the game is terrible. The way that you sounded after the game from what everybody was saying was terrible,
Yeah.
So, they were saying that he sounded kind of dejected from what you hear, but he probably knew the writing was on the wall here. And ending a situation that was probably needed to be ended a long time ago. What do you think now, though? Because all the more important question here. This job doesn't look too bad, right? This job, when you look at the job itself from a coaching standpoint, you have a quarterback there. Because I'm not out on Caleb at all. You got a quarterback there. You got a decent team. You got some skilled players there. You got a pretty good defense. You play in a marquee city, one of the largest cities in the country, right? It's a cold weather city, if you don't mind that, but still one of the marquee cities in the country. I don't think there's not much to like about this job, right?
No, it's like you said, it's one of those. Again, you've got coaches lined up. They're coming. You got that are just waiting for this job, right? And is this the Belichick job? Is this the like Vrabel job? I mean, because those two guys are looking like there's no way, especially Belichick. Belichick is not coming back to the NFL without a quarterback. There's no way he's not going to.
Why would you, right? Like, why would you do that? You're just saying to yourself that you might as well count the years you're gonna be back on the couch. So come off the couch, collect the check. But if you go to a team that doesn't have a quarterback and there's not one on the horizon, like how you might go to a team where there's a Kirk Cousins floating around out there or something, or somebody's in free agency floating around where you feel like maybe we have one of these guys in play, it could be an abysmal situation because you're gonna be back on that couch 2 to 3 years from now. Just go ahead and count the time down. You'll be back on that couch. Because you're going to need a quarterback in this league, and it tends to be the situation that gets guys fired in the first place, at least one of the contributing factors. And that's not something that the Bears have going on here. They seem to have the skilled players. They seem to have the quarterback. So they have at least the weapons to at least make some noise here, right?
Right. And they got a defense, right? They have the defense. That was the one thing they had last year, even with Fields there. So it's not like you're coming into not having skilled players. Like you have a good defense. You have an offense. Maybe you upgraded on the running back, but I mean, right? But via draft, via free agency, I'm with you, man. That this is a nice. I mean, compare it to like New Orleans. What is that going on there versus you have pieces here. You don't know what your quarterback situation is. You don't know what your
New Orleans, what other jobs you expect to be available, right? Because Dennis Allen's already been let go, right? He's already gone.
Dennis Allen's already let go.
We got an interim right now going on with the Jets, right? The Jets got it operating with an interim situation up there.
So we don't know what's going on
now we're going to have that here in Chicago. It's going to have an interim. Those are the situations, right? That are is it a foregone conclusion that Peterson's out in Jacksonville? You think that's a foregone conclusion?
I would think so. I would think so. I mean, why would you keep him? I mean, there's no. I mean,
Goodness
he's
gracious.
yeah. I mean, there's just. I mean, I don't see any reason why you keep him other than like why. I think they're just doing the thing. Why would we replace him when we're already bad? You know, it's like why bring the intern in because he's gonna keep coaching a bad team. They lost a quarterback for. Let's just face it. If he's not, he's probably going to be gone for this year. I mean, you're not bringing him back out there for what 3-9, whatever they are now. I mean, you're not bringing Lawrence back into this season for whatever. You're rolling Mac Jones out the rest of the year. So
that means you got the Jacksonville job may be available then, right? And then in this one, let's just go with the interims that we know typically is what 5 to 7 jobs a year. I want to say in the NFL that kind of rotate around. So with the interims that we have available now, if we go with the Jets interim, we go with the New Orleans interim, we go with the Chicago, what is now going to be the Chicago interim situation. Easily, the Chicago looks best out of those three, right?
I mean, that's easily.
You got an older Derek Carr in New Orleans. You have an even older Aaron Rodgers in with the Jets, which is a disaster.
Free agent. He's not probably coming back. So he says that New York would be on his list. We don't know if New York would be on his list. I mean that's a discussion they need to have.
Man. I mean, come on, man. If you leave New York, right, get the F out of here with this. I'm gonna leave New York, but then come to negotiate with New York.
Right.
I'm gonna divorce my wife, and my first date is with my wife. my ex-wife is my first date.
Right.
It's my ex-wife. Come on, man. Like it's over once he walks out of there, right? There's no way he goes back.
No.
I mean, you just don't walk out. I think there's a chance that he doesn't walk out. I'm not going to say it's a foregone conclusion he's leaving, but I think it'll be very strange if somehow he does manage to clean out his locker and get everything done. You know what I mean? And remove every scrap of his existence from the Jets facility just to walk back in there again.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be those one thing. It's gonna be like they're gonna divorce each other, and that's be one of those like those petty divorces, right? Where we've always had those friends where they break up or they get divorced from each other. Then 5 years they keep talking about each other, like, oh, did you hear? She stole my dog. What? She stole your dog? What do you mean she stole your dog? And you're gonna like hear like these petty things over the next couple of years. That's gonna be Aaron Rodgers and your Jets. Well, he did these really weird things. Like, wait, he did these weird things that we already knew about, that he was already doing, that you weren't yourself what was going on. So
well, some organizations when they're ready to get rid of you, that's kind of like what they do. They kind of start trying to sell you on trying to make sure that you don't. We're not the bad guy here. And I do feel like if you are Chicago, you have a couple things to look forward to. So even though your team definitely sucks, but your team sucks with not the way that it sucked last year. So the way that your team sucked last year was, oh man, like, you're hoping for the Caleb situation. You hope it works out, but you didn't have the skilled players you have now. You knew the Chicago with their offensive record from a quarterback standpoint, especially has been. So I feel like if nothing else, even if your team is not as good as you want it to be, as where you thought it would be this year, you do have some questions that are answered there. And I think the quarterback question is not looking as much of a question mark now as it was looking last year.
No, absolutely. Again, it's like, keep it simple. Look at again, I know look what Dan Quinn did in Washington. He brought in an offense coordinator that spoke
Kingsbury down there, for sure.
Right. And it's like just get the guy and it's again. I know it was like the simple things like when they fired the new offense coordinator and they brought in the younger guy and he's like pumping up and he's like getting excited. And sometimes like a younger quarterback needs that, just that simple like high-fiving, getting excited, and just and those little things make a difference for like a young quarterback and just build plays around the guy. You got to start, like, again, he's young. mold him to what you want him to be, but put the plays in. It's like look at Andy Reid. It's like I hate to say it, but look at he scripts how many plays in like the first his first couple plays. Or I mean his first couple of drives are scripted, but then he lets Mahomes be creative. It's like do that with your quarterback. Why I don't understand why is it so difficult for these guys to figure this out. Get the guy that you want the ball involved, right? Get him involved in the room. Get him like, hey, what makes you comfortable? Great. How about awesome. I can do that, but can you do this, this, and this? And it's like why? And I don't know if you happen to catch the if you watched the Buffalo game, but they were talking about the offensive coordinator with Josh Allen and the offensive, and he said the offensive coordinator takes the plays to Josh. Josh takes the plays to the offensive line. They pick out what kind of is going to work for them, and they go back, and it's a dialogue,
which is what it should be.
It should be right.
That's kind of like between the person that has to execute the play and versus the person that's drawing it up. You should be able to. It's a symbiotic relationship, so you got to be able to have a healthy back and forth there.
Right, and I think that's what anybody like build that. And then you go, hey, can you do this, this, and this? Cool. You can't? Can you do this and this? You can? Great. Let's build that into a play. I just don't understand why that's so hard, especially nowadays. It's like, especially it's not like in college where the calling was not creative, because we've seen NFL coaches steal plays from college. So it's not like it's not being taken. So why not? When you're bringing the guy in, ask them what they're comfortable with, and then start building it out from there. Yeah, I just make it simple and just build around that guy.
Very, very true. Let's talk about our guy here, because there's been a lot of back and forth about our guy Kirk Cousins here.
Oh,
now you know what? I personally am not panicking here. I'm not panicking. Tell you why I'm not panicked. Not panicked because I remember what it was like to have quarterbacks that could have a bad stretch of games and not be thrown out of the league.
Yeah.
Like now, these days, they would want a bench guy. Like I have some of my younger friends. They're like, "Hey, man, should we send him to the bench?" And I just have to think about and even when I was defending Ritter, and Ritter has not proved not to be great, but even when I was defending him, I was saying like, back in the day. We all remember what Peyton's first year was like. And with Peyton's first year, when you look at a lot of fan bases with how they act now, Peyton would not have made it to a second year. A lot of fan bases would have wanted Peyton Manning out of here. They would have wanted Peyton out of here the first year. You'd have been sitting down on the bench. So I'm not ready to panic yet. One of the things I do want to point out here, let's put it on the screen for the people who can't see, but something I have to point out. All right. One thing, Kirk is 5th in yards. All right. That means there's only 4 quarterbacks who has more yards than him. 3,052 yards. Not bad. We got 4 games left to play.
Yep.
He's doing pretty good in my opinion. He's on track for his Kirk 4 that he typically get. Kirk gonna get you about 4,000 yards. And that's what you pay for when you pay that amount of money. You pay for a guy to get you about 4,000 yards. Now, what's troubling here is the 13 interceptions is troubling. Very, very, very troubling. 17 on the touchdowns, which is tied for 10th there. 54.6 on the QBR, tied for 20th there. But that's not what I really want to point out. One of the things I want to point out is this: as we scroll down here and we look at these games, we look at the last 3 games here. Okay, now these are the ones that are being discussed the most that I've seen, because it's 6 interceptions and no touchdowns. Okay,
right.
Now, one of the things I have to point out is that Denver and the Chargers are 2 of the best defenses in the NFL, if not the 2, literally the 2 best defenses in the
Which
NFL.
they are.
I think they are I think they might literally be the 2 best.
Yeah, they're both in the top 5 or at least top 10, respectively.
So, I mean, it's not like you played bums here. You know what I mean? You literally played teams that have given Patrick Mahomes fits. These teams are getting a lot of quarterbacks fits. So you're not the first. I mean, it's not surprising that between when the Chargers and Denver that this will be the result.
Mm-hmm.
Would hope for a touchdown here. I mean, and the 4 interceptions, some were those interceptions that Kirk threw were terrible interceptions.
Yeah.
They were just terrible interceptions. There are no excuse interceptions. So I can't even sit here and give any kind of defense of those. But as far as sitting your quarterback, one of the things you just need to you got to think about when you go to sit your quarterback is that if you got a guy that's already thrown for 3,000 yards where you're at, look around the league at some of these other guys. Look around the league at what's going on with some of these other teams before you're ready to just throw your guy on the bench. Because to me, there's only one direction, Eugene. He comes in, but he doesn't go back out. I think he just he goes out but doesn't come back in. If Penix comes in, Penix doesn't go back out, right? You don't want him to.
No.
So it's a decision that you have to make, and then you got to understand also it's a decision that has another $50 million implication for the next year.
Right.
And next year we owe this guy $50 million. We need him to be able to play. I want a $50 million backup next year. The guy, in my opinion, if he gives us over 4,000, if he can get, let's say he gets over 4,000 on the yards. Touchdown interception ratio is tragic. I don't even know how much better that can get with the amount of games left. You know what I mean? Even if he threw another 10, it'd be 27 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. So 2-1, it'll get better, but you have to throw like another 10 touchdowns in the games left and no interceptions,
Right.
And another thing too is we're going to have the pitchforks will be out next week if he does the same thing. But Minnesota also has the top. I want to say that Minnesota, the Chargers, and Denver, those 3 teams probably have the top are in the top 5 defenses. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I did have to bring up.
I'm just talking out of my behind here.
No. I had to bring up. You made up a great point last week about our quarterback room, right? When we had Desmond Ridder, and I forgot to bring up the point when Desmond Ridder went in for during the Black Friday game. His first thing he did, I'm not even lying. It's like you can look it up, but he fumbled the ball, legit. Like got strip fumbled, and it's like, this is why we don't have this guy. So I'm with you. I had to send you the tweet like, oh look, the panic. Everyone's going panic.
And it is there. Believe me, I have some people. I had no people personally who were saying it.
Yeah, I mean, is it cause for concern if it's halftime and it doesn't look any better? Then maybe we start looking at that decision. But you're right. It just my only thing is, he's never been a person that gets out of the pocket. But I know obviously the Achilles injury. The Achilles coming back from that, so he doesn't look right. Again, I'm not expecting him to be. Again, we always know that anytime it's an Achilles, it's an ACL, it's usually a full year, right? So I don't want to just give up on the guy because just from the year before, like he was one of the best quarterbacks. Like statistically, you can look at everything he did his the year before he got injured with Minnesota. So I'm with you. I don't want to just give up on the guy but I am fearful that the ball does look like it's coming slower out of his hand lately. And I don't know if it's maybe he just doesn't have to push off which again, I understand. The guy's 36 years old. I'm not expecting that, I expect him to be a little rusty, still coming back, but I guess we at some point, we're 6-6 now. Well, if we lose this game in year 2, your point, yes, we lose to one of the best best defenses. But if he looks the same, do we stick with this, or do we at least try and put Penix in? Again, I'm not saying he's any better, but Penix is the more mobile, does have the good arm. So I guess that's where my concern is. It's like, okay, do we just kind of put Penix out there to see, just to kind of give Kurt maybe but to your point, no, if we put Penix in, he's not coming back out. And
he doesn't
then,
come out if everything is going good. If everything goes the way
right.
that we want it to, he wouldn't come back out. And those defenses, I feel like they're pretty good defenses. Some of them in statistics, as I looked them up, were more middle of the pack than what I thought they were, but they're definitely top defenses in general
Yeah.
as far as like points allowed and things of that nature. But if 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and no matter if you're Tom Brady, that's just not going to do it, right? It's just not going to cut it. You're going to have
Right.
to answer for a performance like that. So I don't feel like it's any of this is unfair to Kirk. I just think that you have to remember how the NFL, this isn't baseball. Like, you're not just running guys out of a bullpen in there and hoping that you can go back to them 4 or 5 days later or something like that. Like it's
Right.
not, it doesn't usually work that way in the NFL. You need continuity with the players. You need a guy out here who's going to be the leader of a locker room. You can't have a leader. Imagine being the boss somewhere, but the whole team knows that you might get fired any day now. And we all know it. We all know that, hey man, this guy's talking to us, but he's going to be fired any day, any given day. And that's what kind of happens when that's why these coaches come out immediately and try to put this to bed immediately. A lot of times they don't even want it to fester. They'll come out and just say immediately, like, no, it's not what's going to happen. This person's the quarterback. We're not even thinking about a change. And you can't. You have to just see it through. It is what it is. I know it might suck, but this is the way I think that better teams do it this way. Better teams do it this way. Not every team has this situation that the Steelers had earlier, where the Steelers have a situation where they don't necessarily know who their heir apparent is going to be. Russell was injured at the beginning of the year, so they actually were able to have their what they hope to be their heir apparent start the games, and then Russell was able to come in and show you that he was doing better. And I think our situation is different here. We drafted a guy that we hope definitively is our heir apparent. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. There's no situation in our minds as a team when we drafted Penix that 4 or 5 years on the line, if you were going to the future, we'd see Cousins playing here. That's just not the way that we hope things go. So it'd be different to just kind of sub him in, I think. You know what I mean? Like, it would be hard. And you know what's another thing too? Success would be the worst part about it. If Penix comes out and starts having success, we really can't put him in. And if Penix comes out and starts stinking it up, can we really take him out? You know what I mean? Like, you can do the Bryce Young kind of situation. I think it helped Bryce, but Bryce didn't sit. It's not like Bryce sat for a year. He sat for like 2 games before Dalton got injured and he was back out there again. He sat for like 8 quarters and people are like, he's came back a new man. I think the man sat for 2 weeks. I'm about to go back and look and see. But I really do think that I don't think he sat that long. So I would stick with Kirk for the rest of the season. And we are in a financial position where we don't necessarily have to stick with him for next season, but we kind of should want to stick with him. We should want that to work out for us financially, because otherwise $50 million is a lot of money. Just sitting on the bench.
Right, but I mean, obviously, you wouldn't sit him on the bench. You would move him at some point. But again, it's still
that's true. That's true. You can move him somewhere.
Right, it still hits against our cap. What you're saying is a valid point. But then you have to look at, if we're 6 and 7 after this week, and if he does the same kind of performance, I guess that's where you kind of go. And again, you have a great point. It's not like, and again, I can always dismiss the New Orleans, because how many times have we seen the team going against the new coach lose? I mean, it's like
and
a storybook.
Also divisional too. Divisional. This stretch is pretty difficult, Eugene, when you look at it, because that's one thing I didn't think about. I didn't think about the divisional because I was giving him the L for New Orleans. You're actually being a little bit nicer than I was there. But it's a divisional game. We all know divisional games, anything can happen. Also,
new coach.
When you look at this stretch, new coach, team people are motivated, try to keep their jobs. Also, the stretch of defenses you're going against, you got to go against the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Vikings. That's the stretch of defenses you have to go against and have people judge you against these teams like, oh, he's a bum because he didn't put up points against some of the best defenses in the NFL. I'm going to judge him once things normalize a bit. This is a hard stretch for any quarterback to go through.
Right.
It's a hard stretch. And we're a good team emerging. but we're not
Yes.
the Bills. We're not a good team there. There's a big difference between the two things. Like, so a good team there is expected to overcome anything. Like, so those teams that have been perennially winning 10, 12 games the last 2, 3, 4 years, they're expected to overcome anything. They're expected to overcome people missing, coaching changes, coaches leaving, going to coach other teams. They're expected to still come out here and still put up double-digit wins. We are a team that's still emerging in that sense. I don't have the same expectations for us. I'm just happy that we can maybe get to 9, 10 wins. I'll be very excited if we get the double-digit wins.
Right.
There's, to me, no expectation that you're going to go through a stretch where you play teams like the Chargers, the Vikings, the Broncos, all winning records, by the way. Vikings double digits, Chargers winning record, Broncos winning record, all winning teams. You stink it up and people are like, oh, well, let's bench him now. I mean, maybe he sucks, but I would need to see you suck against competition that's just not so high. And it's interesting to me to think that you put Michael Penix in and all of a sudden he's going up against, we're going to put him again against this murderer's row of defenses. We're going to put him in against the Chargers, the Broncos, and put him in against the Vikings. It just seems foolish to me.
Yeah. No, I just, the pushback is this Penix could get out of the pocket. That's my only thing is like, what does that look different? Does that look different? Maybe. Maybe that looks different.
How many points do you feel like it's worth? How many?
I don't know.
That's
That's always the question. I don't think it looks different at Denver because let's just face it. Denver is tough to play at home, but maybe it looks different against the Chargers because the defense actually showed up for a change.
Another thing too, though, is let's not forget Youngway's part to play in these things. Like if Youngway makes a couple kicks, these games are different.
Oh yeah,
and we have the same Kirk Cousins putting up the exact same performance, putting us. See, Kirk's doing what I think we paid him to do, put us in position to win. And the thing is that we're not winning. It's not necessarily because of Kirk, and that's when you pay a quarterback. And to be fair or not fair, they get too much of the credit, too much of the blame. But when you pay a quarterback, in my opinion, you're paying a guy to put you in position to win games, you know? And I feel like he's at least doing that. Maybe that field goal gets missed at the end. Maybe it gets blocked. Maybe something happens. You know what I mean? But when you add that up throughout a lot of these games, some of these outcomes would have been different. Some of these games would have been played different, you know?
Mm-hmm. A great point.
And I feel like right now, Kirk's giving us a pretty good chance doing everything he's supposed to do. The interceptions got to come down. 4 interceptions. A couple of them were terrible in that. What was it? Broncos or Chargers? What we just played? We just played the Chargers.
The Chargers, but there was some really bad route running
too.
There was some terrible route running that weren't on him. I mean, I don't blame the last one on him because it's 4th and whatever. You're just gonna throw it and see what happens. So, but there was some. Like, if you go back there, I've seen some plays where Drake didn't run the wrong route. Moody ran the wrong route. So I mean, there's some ones. It's like and it's still like you said. We always know there's not a lot of practice in the off season. There's not a lot of practice during the season. So the guys are just trying to figure each other out. So it takes that time to they get that continuity with each other, right? So you still have Montana Rice just overnight. So. We see the moments.
Yeah, and he's played 12, 13 games in totality. These guys have played in totality with each other. And that's another thing too. Games. The thought of putting it takes us to in my opinion, let's get a good season or two of the same coaches, the same culture, the same players there. See if you can build something because you got to see if you start to see some continuity or something build there with those players before you just jettison the whole situation. And then maybe you start to look at a situation after that and say, hey, well, this isn't working out. But it's been 12 or 13 games. So we relax. The thought that you put in Penix now, what does he start to build over his last 5, 6-ish games? He starts to build something. Remember, we thought Desmond Ridder was building something. He went 4-1 his last 5 games. And we thought something was building there. I just don't think until you have a more of a larger sample size. You know what I mean? And I think Kirk putting up 4,000 yards, that's hard to just toss to another team. And I think that's probably what he's going to do this year here in Atlanta.
Right. And look at to your point, look what he's throwing to. He doesn't have a legit number one and receiver or tight end. He does have two really good running backs, but for some reason we don't use them enough. I think we need to implement those guys a little bit more. That would help with the play action, get some more guys open. But yeah, Kurt, to his credit, he's had some good receivers. Don't get me wrong, I like our receivers, but they're C plus B minus receivers at best, right? It's not. I'm not trying to be mean. I like the guys we have, but give him a legit receiver, and let's judge him on that, right? Let's give him a number one and see what happens then. Then you can go, okay, if I'm 6-6 and I'm looking at this record, and it's like, okay, but we gave him a number one. We gave him a better defense. Let's just face it. This defense hasn't rushed even the worst at rushing a quarterback until that Chargers game. And then let's put him on trial. Then we can go. Then we can do the Penix conversation, in my opinion.
Yeah, more of an educated situation. We're not just talking with emotion, right? We're not just speaking the emotion of hard fought games, and also speaking about these teams like they're bums. These teams that we played, that we've lost to, they don't suck. They were all good teams, with the exception of New Orleans. And New Orleans is a divisional game that goes that way all the time. So we'll see.
New Orleans always plays is tough, but that's
always a barn burner there.
Always.
Let's go here, and I hate to say it here, but it's looking like. Is it rebuild time in San Francisco? Is it rebuild time in San Francisco, man? Is it time for the rebuild now? And does the rebuild put Purdy's contract in jeopardy? We'll talk Purdy's contract a little bit more towards the end of the season. We got to wait till we kind of finish that up, but we'll at least discuss a little bit, since I think McCaffrey will be out for the rest of the season.
He is. He's on IR, so he's out the rest of the year.
So McCaffrey's been disastrous situation, I think, for the 49ers. They came into the season saying that the guy was healthy. He's supposed to play week 1, plays 2 or 3 weeks. That never looks like the same guy. It's funny because this was actually one of the first games where he started to like the same guy in the first couple of runs. He rips off the first couple of runs here, and he looks like, okay, that looks like 23 McCaffrey right there. Mm-hmm. And then the injury happens, and I'm like, this unfortunately looks like the 2024 McCaffrey here, because this is exactly what it's been. It's been this all year with McCaffrey, and now you got a lot of money tied up. Too much money tied up, in my opinion, for a rebuild, man. Can you say rebuild and have this much money tied up, Eugene? You owe a lot of guys.
You owe a lot of guys. You got Debo.
And that's before you pay Purdy. You haven't even paid one guy yet. Yeah. So you owe a lot of guys without even paying your quarterback.
Right, and you got to pay your quarterback. That's just Bart.
You're gonna have to pay him.
You gotta pay him
for sure.
So yeah, you're gonna have to let some guys go. He gave all these guys money, but some guys are gonna be out. Clearly, I think Debo. I think that he's gonna be gone. I think Kittle's gonna be gone. I just don't think they're gonna have the money to pay those guys. You're gonna have to. Purdy has earned he's your starting quarterback. So now you got to figure out a way to build around him. And I didn't even care now. What's McCaffrey? What happens when McCaffrey? What happens with him? Is he even?
Yeah, I need to look at his contract. I got to look at that too and see, because McCaffrey got paid with them. I think they had taken over that Panthers contract. But McCaffrey got paid. Trent Williams got paid, I want to say, right? I think that was Trent Williams got paid recently. Brandon Ayuk got paid. Debo Samuel got paid. Did George Kittle get paid?
I think Kittle was.
I don't know. I don't know what Kittle's contract is. I gotta look at Kittle's contract situation and see. But I definitely know with those other guys, you pay them, and now you got to pay Mr. Purdy. With a record like you have, this has got to be killing you. If you're the 49ers and you're the Cowboys, this has to be killing you, because you paid the money and your results are worse than when you didn't pay the money. so you're looking at it, you're like, man, what is going on here, man?
Yeah.
I don't know. Me personally, we'll dive a little bit more into this, but me personally, I am not into all the way rebuild yet. I think the money's too much right now. What are your thoughts? We'll dive a little bit more into in depth later, but briefly, do you have any thoughts on the rebuild?
Well, I mean, they're gonna have to do it at some point because it's like they have their window. They went to 2 Super Bowls, and now you got to reset at some point. You got to find a way to reset, and they have too many contracts. That's the thing. You have too many contracts, too many guys that are not playing. And unfortunately, unlike the Cowboys, and maybe like Cowboys, they just have so many guys they had under a contract to go for a Super Bowl that are injured this year, and that's just facts. It's just they got injured. They got hit with the injury bug this year.
Pay the money and then you get the injury bugs. Terrible.
Yeah. That's just unfortunate, and you can't blame them. I mean, go for it. I mean, that's the risk you always gonna have. But I mean, kudos for them going for it. I mean, heck, at least they were in the Super Bowl last, last 5 years. I mean, give them credit for that.
Very true. Justice Stats, Reggie Johnson, Eugene Moore, and check us out. Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. We got a little hiccup there. Wherever you find your podcast. See you next time.